What's up YouTube, Lambo here, and today I have a very special replay prepared for you guys. It is a game between the two best ZVT players in the world. It is spawning here in the bottom right hand side, Liquid Clem, and in the top left it is Ililililili, aka Serral. So this is a ladder match between the two, and I saw that this match went on for quite long between them, and I figured I will just ask the winner afterwards for the replay. I'm not sure if you are all aware of this, but basically everybody stalks Serral's match history, and whenever he loses any games, you will know. But also when you see that he's in a game for very long, you're already wondering, okay, who could this be against? And then you check, and Clem is in a game for the same duration, so you realize, okay, these two have to be having an epic game. I'm not going to spoil for how long it was. I also know the winner already, of course, because I'm not going to message the loser afterwards for the replay. I'm also friends with both, so that can't be a spoiler in any shape or form. I just wanted to get one of the highest level games, learn some from that myself as well, and we'll try to make that happen here. As we have a match on side Delta here, which this map is actually deceivingly big with a lot of bases, and all of these bases are very difficult to hold toward the end of the match. So this is actually the map where it takes the longest. I was talking with Rainer while we saw that both of those were in a game forever, and we guessed which map it was, and I actually guessed that it was going to be side Delta or Al Sayoni. Those were my guesses. He guessed Equilibrium. And it was indeed side Delta, and Clem opening up with a gas first here. So what does gas first do for you? It makes it so you can make this factory earlier than usual. You still get the CC down, but you get a factory before your marine. You don't actually get a marine. So the downside or the trade-off for this build is that you don't have a marine at home in case your opponent goes for a Ling run by. So he's gambling a little bit now against a pool first where you run by the Zerglings. This would already be a bad opener for Clem. Another downside of this build is that you can go into the main base because there is no marine with the Overlord. So that's something that you can do as well. Another downside is that you can't really hide the fact that it's gas first because the Reaper is just quite a bit later. So by the time that Serral sees that this is a Reaper, he already knows, okay, this is not 2x Reaper. 2x Reaper would have been way earlier because the barracks would be down here. The Overlord would have also seen it by now. But this is not a normal Reaper, as the Queen already is out by the time that the Reaper arrives, which is not normal, by the way. Usually you still can shoot at the Lings a little bit, but yeah, Serral, having made the 4 Zerglings as always, is completely fine here without losing any Zerglings. You really don't expect him to lose any. Against a gas first opening, and Clem is doing something special here. He stays on 1 gas, which means 3cc, but it's not a normal 3cc opener. He starts with 2 Cyclones, which is actually pretty cool to see. Something that we don't see too often. These Cyclones are going to be super early, and he can put on pressure against the Queens of Serral with those Cyclones. Serral is spreading the creep very, very offensively. You might notice that very often you don't put the first initial tumors on the very edge of creep and just put it a little bit further back in order to have them safely be spread without the Reaper being able to interrupt your creep spread there. But since Serral had 4 high HP Zerglings, he manages to spread it down here. The reason he didn't go for the Reaper, by the way, is because on this map the Reaper can always escape. He can jump up here or down there. Serral also scouted, by the way, the fact that this was 3cc, and he saw that there were Cyclones as well. I'm pretty sure the Cyclones were the ones that killed the Overlord. Yeah, there's 1 kill on the Cyclones. We could see on the minimap. There's also 4 Zerglings now that are getting ready to run by. Run-bys are very good against 3cc Cyclone builds because there is no wall for quite a while. So Serral can abuse that. And what run-bys do against Cyclone styles in particular, the reason why they're so good, even though there's usually continued Hellion production, is that the Terran can't force their entire attention at the front. And with Cyclones, you can consistently lock onto Queens and keep shooting them from out of range. And you can consistently trade very well because of it. So now with that run-by, which Serral times very well, by the way, even without any vision, he gets a couple of SCVs, gets 2 SCVs, now 1. Gets a full scout as well, so he knows that this is bio. Sees the second barracks, which is huge as well, because these Cyclone openers, they could also be going into mech, of course. So he confirms the fact that it is bio, and at the same time, Clem obviously stops microing, so his Queens are staying very healthy. Another adjustment that you make against these Cyclone styles is that you keep your Queens very much so together. if you split up your queens, you can lose them very quickly. So normally in ZVT nowadays, you always split your queens in 2 groups of 3 queens each. So usually you would have 1 queen group here and 1 here, for example, and then this queen group rotates over here. If the Hellions are over here, then the other one rotates over here, and you just keep rotating your queens back and forth. Another run by the way, while I'm explaining stuff. Serral says no time for that. Gets an extra 3 SVs, forces all the Hellion Cyclone back home, so this is super annoying for Clem. He did lose 16 Zerglings overall already. I'm not used to observing, so I still need to figure out all the hotkeys and such. And speaking while observing is another thing that I never do, even if I do cast games sometimes, professionally even. I do not ever observe those myself. I usually just follow the observer, or usually there is a dedicated observer. Either way, not the case here. Clem actually messed up his mining here. He didn't pull into gas, so that's a little bit annoying. Serral opts to go for roaches. He likes to do this quite often. Even if it isn't against Cyclones, even if it isn't against mech, he just likes to play roaches in general. It depends on the map very often. This base is very exposed. I wouldn't be surprised if Clem gets a cancel here. So yeah, he starts firing away at the hedge. The 2 Cyclones are here. You cannot hold. This is so far off creep. Serral instead takes the normal for it and gets another Ling run by into the Clem's 3rd base. He's being so good with these Ling run bys in the early game. Gets a couple extra workers. Micros with the queens here. So he loses a couple of extra Zerglings, but kills 4 additional SCVs. So overall 8 SCVs going down for 26 Zerglings, plus Clem not being able to micro the entire time on the other side of the map as well. Finishes off the rest of the Zerglings. Overall, somewhat of an even early game, I would say. One thing that I find very surprising here is that Serral does in fact not go for the Carapace upgrade. So he starts the upgrades as if he was playing against mech. He did scout double eBay and he scouted 2 barracks, so he knows that this is not mech. So I'm assuming this was just a misclick, because you really want Carapace upgrades against bio units. It doesn't matter what composition you're going for. Marines shoot faster than Zerg units shoot. So the Carapace upgrades are just super important, even for Zerglings, because Zerglings attack very quickly as well. They have a fast attack speed, but Zerglings, in order to just get in range, require the Carapace upgrade as well. So they can survive a little bit more. He sees the extra factory here. He sees that there's no 6th gas yet. And Clem, on the other side of the map, scouts the fact that there's roaches. He actually made 2 Widow Mines even, and he made like 10 factory units. So he has no tanks at all, which means Serral is going for the push. I just have to imagine that he didn't plan on doing this because he went for the Infestation Pit at first. But now that he saw that his opponent doesn't have tanks, he's going for it now. And this should be very scary for Clem. Usually you want to have at least three tanks out by the time this happens. And he has 0 tanks. So Serral is the one that is going to be offensive now. As I said before, it's very, 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 very big that he doesn't have the Carapace upgrade. If you just want 1 upgrade, you don't even want Missile. I think you want Carapace. And an attack like this, all of the bites hit the attack lab, and the factory which doesn't die, the bunker doesn't die at all. I don't think if you engage in like that, you should waste all your bites quite like that. Man, the Marines are trading so well. The Marines have 1-1 in combat shields against the 0 armor or 0 Carapace roaches. So that was actually a very good trade for Clem. Overall, quite far ahead in resources lost, and I think takes a commanding lead in this game. I'm gonna lower the sound a little bit, by the way. I'm sorry about that. I feel like it is quite loud for me personally. So, yeah, Clem may be overextending a little bit, though. We'll lose the tank. So, toward the end, maybe a little bit unnecessary that he kept drilling the tank towards Serral there. He also overmade SCVs. You don't really want to go above 70 SCVs. You can see 26 here at his own 3rd base before he starts the 4th CC himself. So, he has not won yet, but I think he took quite a commanding lead, as they're almost even in supply, even in workers, and that very much so favors the Terran player always, but especially if the Zerg is on a roach-based army composition, which is just not good against Marine siege tank on even supplies. It's very difficult to trade, so Serral goes for the comeback mechanic of the Infestor. If you get 1 good Fagner, it's a way back into the game, and he starts up a Bidding Nest and a Hive. So the normal transition from this is into Ultras. And Clem makes sure to not overextend at all. This tank is stuck until this depot will get lifted. I don't think Clem realizes quite yet. Usually the way you should play against roaches is you gather up your army until at least 180 supply, because the roaches don't scale very well. As I said before, they're not supply efficient, which means if you have a maxed out army against a maxed out army that is maxed on a lot of roaches, the Terran army on paper destroys the Zerg army. So waiting and doing nothing, and just moving out with as many units as you can lift up. So there's a low commitment attack, where theoretically he doesn't need to lose anything, as long as he pays attention to the medevacs. Which he is obviously doing since he has Clem. He stems forward, even kills a couple of roaches. The moment he sees, okay, there's enough roaches in position now, he stops taking the trade, and this is a low commitment attack until he flies into 10 queens in the main base. You definitely don't want to go there. Loses an entire medevac. He uses this as a distraction to move out, clear some creep towards the middle of the map. This is maybe where Serral wants to engage. Serral just now starting Baning Speed though, and he's playing Ling Bane Roach Ravager with a couple of infestors. So Serral is the one that now needs to buy time in order to just survive, in order to get out Hive Tech units. He doesn't have the supply open right now to get Vipers, otherwise I'm pretty sure he would start them. Because Vipers are fantastic against his army composition. Blinding Clouds against the tanks would be so huge. So now let's see how Serral deals with this. He deals with it in just not dealing with the army itself, but rather forcing the army to go back with a big run by. That's a very good move by him. Splits off a couple of Zerglings to force the units of Clem to stay at home for even longer. Gets a couple of extra SCVs. So overall, good moves there by Serral, who still doesn't have the baiting speed, but he makes it harder for Clem to move forward. This is not the entire army of Clem. So Serral sees this. He actually pokes in. All of these tanks are clamped up. He doesn't quite decide to go for it, but catches 2 of the tanks at the same time. Good corrosive bites here from Serral, and at this point it's only 4 tanks, with the 2 extra tanks that join the fray now. All of these Marines are also low HP, and this army of Clem, it doesn't quite look that scary. However, Serral's army also isn't that good. I mean, on paper, as I said before, this should favor Clem. An engagement with units like this, Serral needs to pick off more tanks before the fight starts. That's a good funnel, catches a lot of Marines, gets also the corrosive bite on one of the tanks. Infestor escapes with energy as well, while a huge counterattack is going on. Banelings also into the third base at the same time. Catches a lot of SCVs, 43 SCVs have gone down. Their planetary finish here just in time at the fourth base for this big attack. And at the same time, he just keeps clearing up units. Clem has not found the multitasking to move forward the tanks, and now the tanks are completely exposed. Serral jumps on it, and this is a clinical defense where he just picks apart the tanks one at a time, where you would think that most Zerg players are just dead against Clem. You're on even supply with Roach Ravager based army composition, with Roach Ravager Ling Bane. Against a maxed out Marine tank composition, Serral knows, okay, he can't defend the base. What am I going to do? I'm going to counterattack, keep the Infestors at home and the Ravagers to stop the tanks from moving forward, and punish Clem for not paying attention, and hope he's not in position on his side of the map. And it has not only bought Serral time, but it has given Serral the lead at this point. He's getting his 2 upgrades, and even though Clem already has +3, so he's ahead in upgrades, he killed enough workers that Clem is not maxed anymore. Clem has no bank, Clem is not maxed. The 5th CC is just now finishing. And his worker count is not looking too hot at this point. Whereas Serral is very happily mining off of 5 bases, since he took this bottom base as well. He has transferred drones here now, so this is freshly mining. And at this point, it's going to be very difficult for Clem to push anywhere towards the bottom of the site, because even though most of the action has been taking part at the top, Clem has never tried to clear any of the creep spread at the bottom of the map. Serral pokes forward and finds more siege tanks. In moves that I just find, it's sick that he knows that there's no attack coming, and now he's here in position as well. For the quad medevac drop, he gets a fang on a couple of the units. I mean, the last couple of minutes have really been amazing for Serral. I know the resource loss initially was quite bad for him. At this point, it is only 2,000 resource loss behind, which is very, very good for Zerg, especially considering that, I don't know if I can... Okay, I think they need to host with Game Hard so I can have the income graph and the battle report and all that kind of stuff. But he's definitely outmining him. You can see at the bottom he's mining more minerals than Clem is. And even though the work count is even right now, Clem is oversaturated. He has not expanded. He made this into an orbital, so his 5th base is very late in comparison to where Serral is at. And Clem also not multitasking at the top, so Serral is keeping his entire army together. He has these scouting links, scouting for the drops, which I think is super good. I usually put overlords there, but Zerglings obviously are cheaper, and you can put them there at any moment, so it's really good the way he's abusing the Zerglings. I'm definitely gonna copy that for my own playstyle. Even just against drops, usually I have Zerglings covering for the normal move-outs, but if you scout drops, that's just as valuable. As he tries to poke forward here, gets a crossbow on the Widow Mine. that was spotting here. No sensor tower just yet. Clem is finishing that up just now. Good split-offs. I think he just got a Viper there with a snipe. Yeah, indeed, one Viper went down over here, and Clem is in full camping mode. The one counterattack and the thwarted attack from earlier forced Clem to position at home. He does not think he has what he needs to keep moving out across the map, and instead he's going to try to play the cost efficiency game. Serral finding a good fungal, but I don't think this is a good fight because he doesn't have any actual burst damage against these units that he can follow up with. If you hit a fungal like this and you have way less army than your opponent there, you still can't do anything with it. Sometimes you bait yourself into it, like Serral did here, but you kind of need banelings. Or lurkers, very close by, in order to capitalize on it. Still, resource loss looking very good for Serral. He now walks forward here. Starts engaging, probably with a Blinding Cloud. Corrosive Bile going for the Siege Tank now, the double kill on the Liberator, and he finds a good engagement here. A lot of Clem's Bile out of position. Serral has not really split up his army yet, and it has worked quite well for Clem because Clem keeps anticipating the army split. He pre-splits his own army, and Serral just keeps his entire army together as one strong force. As he's now also finishing up his +3 carry pace, so now they're even on upgrades. Serral even having very, very good missile upgrades, which isn't really that impactful because the Ravagers, most of the damage comes from the Corrosive Bites at this point. He even has a Sharking Infestor here. Let's see if he can use that well. Clem misses the Infestor with a snipe. Oh, he unbores it too fast. He didn't wait for all of the units to be distracted by his Ling Bane force, because that's usually how you get these fungals off. You need to engage first with a Ling Bane, so the aggro doesn't get drawn by the Infestor unburrowing, because you cannot fungal in time. The unburrow animation is too slow to fungal if you're right next to Terran units, so a little bit of a mistake there from Serral, but it's still looking very good. And one thing that you can see that Serral always does quite well is taking bases from his opponent. He knows these are going to be highly contested. He's going to take them early, and I think he's going to try to saturate them as early as possible. You can see him moving drones from the bases that he has very secure to this location, and then he puts Nidus Worms in order to retreat with the drones, because you cannot hold both of these bases very nicely at the very least. So if the Terran decides to push towards one direction, you can give up the base and actually escape with the drones. That's how Serral uses these Niduses mainly. It's not base defense, it's rather an escape path for the drones, which I find super cool. He has done this in the past. Also something that I haven't seen any other top player do so far. So that is a nice use of these Nidus Worms. As, yeah, Clem is just trying to set up defensively. He has 4 tanks over here. He has 2 tanks over here. This is, funnily enough, the least defended location. So if Serral tries to engage somewhere, this is probably the best bet for him. But I think Serral doesn't need to engage. Serral just is mining more bases than his opponent. I believe one base has 18k resources. So if you mine 2 entire bases more than your opponent in a mined out scenario, your opponent needs to trade 36,000 resources better than your opponent. Terran also usually spends more on buildings. You can see the spending here. On economy and tech, Clem has already spent 4,000 resources extra, so you can add that on top in a late game scenario. This is the amount that Clem needs to trade better if he lets Serral mine out both of these bases. Serral even trying to take the base right next to Clem. This one is very hard to take because you can just put tanks here and then drop units. And the tanks will cover for the units, and you can't ever mine from this realistically. But if you're as rich as Serral, just trying to put a hatchery there and hoping your opponent doesn't do anything about it is a very good move, honestly. It is a very low risk, high reward type deal. If he puts a hatchery here for 300 minerals and then he mines, let's say, 1k resources, because Clem doesn't see it right away, since the sensor tower doesn't quite reach, unless Serral is mining from this gas, it is a good play for Serral. And yeah, Serral respects Clem's defenses. He's not attacking. He's not even thinking about attacking. And Clem's not moving out, which means these Infestors are going to have a very hard time doing anything, because there are a couple of turrets that Clem is making. Even with that fungal, Clem is pre-split over here, so it's going to be very difficult for him. Serral just says, okay, I'm going to mine out these 2 bases. I'm also mining out quicker than you because I have more workers. And then we will start fighting for the last remaining bases. This is usually one of the best game plans that Zergs can have. So let's say you mine out the Terran's bases, and then you, on top of that, you try to keep Terran from expanding towards one of the sides. This forces Terran to be proactive on the map. Clem has not felt the need to do anything yet, but the moment he sees this base, I mean, this base as well, this base is very attackable from his position here. He has tanks on the high ground, so he can start sieging this one. But this is the base he really cannot let Serral have. And Serral is getting away with it so far. He's been mining decently much from the base in the bottom left-hand side. And he can still defend this as well. These tanks are not quite in range of the actual hatchery, so there's no creep here, so fights might not be favorable. But now the Zerg needs to decide how much do I want to commit on defending this. This was a good fungal, this was a good trade. He gets a Liberator as well. Serral trading almost even against the Terran is pretty nuts at this point. But he still needs to get rid of this army. This army, in the end, will not trade well against what Clem has, because Clem doesn't have that many bio units anymore. He has 16 ghosts and 10 tanks. With the extra Liberators that he's adding in, it's going to be increasingly difficult for Serral to find good trades on the map. As Clem stems forward with these units, I still think he should siege forward with the tanks. Which is exactly what he's doing now, because the moment there's tanks here, you cannot hold this anymore with Ling Bane forces. Whenever you go there, the tanks will start shooting away at your Lings and at your Banes. Just like that. Unless Clem doesn't pay attention. In that case, you can, I guess, deal with it. As only a single Marauder is alive. I mean, he's still mining from this, he's mining from this. So now the Zerg needs to decide, okay, how long do I want to defend this? Because if you trade that much worse, because you're trying to hold the base, even though you're mining resources that your opponent will get later on, it might still be worth it to sack it a little bit earlier, as all of these fights, Clem can just basically load up. Until there is any Corruptors, if Clem doesn't make mistakes, exactly, he retreats towards his tank. It's the same idea on this side as it is on this side. You retreat towards your tanks, and the melee units of the Zerg will just die while you load up your units. So theoretically, Clem should always trade very effectively here. We can see the resources lost deficit growing higher every minute at this point, because Clem always escapes with the units that he is producing. Besides on this side where he's not paying attention, I suppose, as a lot of bio units have died over here. I like that he's using the Ravagers on this side. Where the tanks are actually in position and he needs the ranged units, whereas over here the tanks are not quite in position yet, so he's using the Ling Bane. At this point there's so many Liberators though. These engagements are not good for Serral. He just doesn't kill any units. He killed a Marauder here, 2 Ghosts, but only because Clem didn't lift it. He scans at the same time. He now retreats with the drones, probably over to this side, and he tries to mine from over here. Yep, exactly. That's exactly what he's doing. This means that Clem mined, or Serral rather mined, about a third of this base, I would say. About a third of this base is minerals. A fourth of this base is gas, which was available to him. This I'm heavily gonna assume he's gonna mine all of it. So already he has mined more of the map. You can also see this reflected in the bank at this point. But this is not one of those games where Serral can now just start throwing his units on top of the Terran. You will see a lot of games where the Zerg will try to find a hole and then attack, remax, attack, remax, attack, remax until either the Terran runs out of resources or the Zerg runs out of resources. And the reason this works is usually because the Zerg tries to get momentum on his side and tries to deny Terran bases early on into the game. Oh, he finally has Corruptors on the map. And Clem is exposed here with all of the Liberators, with the Medivacs and the Viking. The Vikings were the only anti-air apart from that one turret that is helping out, so all of these Liberators actually end up going down. He even gets the Corrosive Biles from downtown on the tank. So this is the exactly the type of trades that Serral is so good at. The small type of trades, which don't seem that important at this point. But we're steering towards a mined-out map scenario. And whenever I have these mined-out map scenarios that I barely lose in the end, I always think to myself, man, if only I played more cautious 20 minutes ago. I remember all the bad trades that I took throughout the game, and I think, oh my god, if only I played more carefully, if only I respected the lives of my units a little bit more. And that's kind of the philosophy that Serral has this game. He's playing very carefully, trying to outmine his opponent, and then in the end, I think once Clem starts to expand here, he needs to have his stand. This space is also pretty exposed, by the way. Clem doesn't have any tanks over here yet. I guess it's very difficult to attack through Liberators, but once there's a planetary, this is definitely bustable. Serral's still mining from this base. I cannot stress how big this is. Getting any resources from this base is so huge. He now understands, okay, the Liberators are exposed, gets a couple of Liberators. The Corruptors have been very, very good for him so far. Needs to make sure that he doesn't go in range of the Ghost, though, because the Ghost snipes are very effective against the Corruptors. He even gets a Queen there for two Ghosts. And a bunch of links. I think this is still good for Serral. All of these even-looking trades are very good for Serral. Clem wants to have trades where he kills Zerg units, and he doesn't lose anything, preferably. Just like here. You load up, you go back. Look at how many Zerglings are dying down here. Snipes on the Corruptors, none of the Ghosts died. A couple of the Liberators die. The way Zerg trades at this point is usually by you force the Ghost back, you force the Ghost to run, and the Corruptors are the units killing stuff. So whenever Serral gets a trade, it's because of the Corruptors. This base is now completely exposed. I think if you're Serral, you don't fight this, you kill the base. Because this planetary is completely by itself. You cannot notice though. As a Zerg, if you run here and there's 4 tanks, you will feel really stupid. Because just in order to check if there's tanks, you will lose a lot of links and banes. Still mining from this place, just have to mention it every now and again. I'll mention this like twice a minute. Someone in the YouTube comments, I'm sure, can count and tell me how often I mention how important it is to mine this base, but trust me, it is very important. Serral now also going for the Greater Spire, already has 2/2 upgrades. On air, once again, he's forcing the Ghost back. Without actually expecting to kill any of the Ghosts, he loses a lot of Link Bane for it, but the Corruptors are the units that actually get the trades. Those trades were not good though. He's now 13k resources lost behind. Oh, huge fungal there on the Ghost. Gets 6 Ghosts. A lot of Link Bane dying for it though. Okay, this was a good trade overall. He also gets some value once again with the Corruptors on the side. Only 11k resources lost down. Resources lost really is the way you cast these games. Also the way that I look at the replays and I see, okay, where exactly the things go wrong. This base is completely undefended. I wish Serral would know about it. He just doesn't. Clem now exposing a bunch of air units once again. Oh, this could be a big fungal. I don't know why Clem is not putting turrets up in front here. Good parasitic bomb on the Vikings. Catches a bunch of Vikings, a bunch of Medivacs. The Ghosts are out of position. The Infestor tries to get in range and borrows the tank. Fires at it straight away. Serral was committed already. The Zerglings are all gonna die here. And the Ghosts got a couple of extra snipes on the Corruptors. Still, all of these trades are surprisingly good for Serral. Just because of how much value the Corruptors are generating. The Corruptors keep killing so many Liberators. And that's really the big deal. I always see the Link Bane dying. Killing maybe a tank or two. But the Corruptors are really the unit working out for Serral right now. And you can see the lead that Serral has amassed for himself by just out-mining his opponent. Should probably transfer some of the workers over here. He can't mine from these 2 mineral patches, so that is understandable. The one Ghost being super annoying here. The one Ravager will definitely lose the fight against the Ghost. Oh, snipe gas cancelled. Cute little interaction over here. Ravager now goes down. It's very difficult to mine against this. I think the best way to do it is get Broodlords. I don't think it would be unwise for Serral to start giving up the bottom left-hand side now that that Clem has this as a fortified location as well. And just start pushing with Broodlords at the top. You need to make good rotations. This is what the late game TVZ is all about. Because your army in a straight up fight, as Zerg, always loses to the Terran army. Here he finds a lot of exposed units from Clem once again. Good trade here for Serral. I just clicked something that... Whoops, what is this? Nope. How did I get my production tab to the bottom right? Trying to click everything right now. No? Oh, I did it, okay. We're back. Very sorry about that. I sped up the replay as well a little bit. But I am sure nothing happened. As the one Ghost is actually killing the hatchery by itself. Which is pretty funny. Serral is still trying to get trades down here, which surprises me a little bit. I think this is right now the most important base. Once again, talking about how important this base is, because Clem will for sure get this if this goes later, so trying to break this position would be huge with Broodlords. He has the gas and the minerals to do so. And yeah, the general game plan still stands. He mined parts of his opponent's bases. He mined more than his opponent. Now he gets his final army, where mobility is not important anymore for Zerg. This is why you don't see Zergs going for Broodlords too fast. It's because if Terran splits up their army properly, it's the same reason why Broodlords are weak against ground toss in late game, is that army splits are just super good against Broodlords because they're so immobile. And you can pick the fights where you want to engage, you can dodge the Broodlords, you can You're not forced to fight the Broodlords, basically. And you can go from there. Serral now tries to find another hole. This is still the least defended base. This bunker looks scary, but it's still just 4 Marines inside. I guess it does have more armor, though. This Ghost will scout the Broodlords. And die for that. Good snipes here on Overseers. Overseers are also very expensive. One Overseer costs 150 minerals, 50 gas, so 200 resources. If you think about it, if you snipe one Overseer, that's a better trade than if you, as a Zerg, abduct one Cyclone. Overseers cost more than a Cyclone. I think Cyclone costs the same as, well, I think it costs 125.50 now. And yeah, Clem now finally taking this base. Serral has shifted his attention a little bit more towards the top side. This space is not that important for him anymore. I think this space he will never break, this space he will never break. I think the play now is to rotate towards the top, make a lot of Broodlords, and fight there. Maybe even with the ground army. Probably the ground army being used as run-bys is still the best. I don't think getting a Nidus in here is very easy to do. The only way to do it would be with changelings. Good scans from Clem, gets another Infestor. What's the resources lost at? The most important, 16k. This is still fine for Serral. Clem making a turret wall around his tanks over here. And Serral now pushing with the Spore Crawlers as well as the Broodlords. I think it's about time. There's only 4 ghosts here as anti-Broodlord. Serral can't quite... Serral cannot get in range of the ghost because of the tanks here. You can look at the range of the tank. Now it's unsieged. Now the Infestor needs to go forward. He tries to get a fungal, doesn't get it. Misses by a little bit. Serral keeps clearing Broodlords one by one, which is also very expensive over time. Even this base, I kind of wish Serral would have mined a little bit sooner with more workers, because this base even is going to be contested as well. This is usually where I lose my late games on this map, is because I don't mine this base fast enough, and then later the Terran pushes over here, and then they secure all of these, and then it's over. Gets another snipe on another Infestor. Does Serral actually see this nuke? He does, okay. He unroots the spores, goes back. Crew spreads in location, puts back the Spore Crawlers. So he deals with this quite nicely. His ground army not really doing anything, still waiting, biding their time. I'm sure their time to shine will come. As Clem pushes forward now with the tanks. The way the ranges work on this is that the Terran army kind of outranges the Zerg army. Because the Broodlords can't go in range of the Ghost without the Infestors being in range, and the tanks and Liberators zone out the Ghost. So you can see here, whenever the Broodlords approach, a couple of Infestors die. This was still a good trade though. Not that many Ghosts remaining, but he also has Vikings to zone, so Serral cannot go any further than this. Serral cannot let him have this base. It's a very important base, guys, I swear. Okay, he gets a kill on the tank. That's actually pretty big. That enables his Infestors to be free to move a little bit more. All of these Viking volleys is a kill, by the way. Every single time these Vikings fired anything, they're gonna kill a unit. Another nuke to try and get rid of these Spore Crawlers. But I mean, if Serral just pays attention, he moves back the Spore Crawlers. This is 100-100 that he has effectively killed from his opponent. So nukes are quite expensive. I think the most effective use of nukes are distractions. And Clem actually pushes forward toward the base. There are 0 tanks here. There is no ground AoE whatsoever. So this should be the time where Serral, I think, goes for the engage. He can come from the top with the Broodlord and faster Viper. Just needs to make sure to land good spellcasting on the opposing Vikings, and then he can come in here with the ground army. This is so... Clem has so much at the bottom left still. A lot of units also are dying due to misrally from Serral, because his main army is over here. He always rallies his units over there, so whenever something spawns from the hatcheries on the far left, the units generally rally over here. If Clem had full vision, if Serral had full vision, he would engage on top of this army 100%. Clem's starting to drop mules here to mine this, which is a very good move. Serral trying to re-establish this base over here. If Clem mines these bases, there's no way Zerg wins this game. You cannot... In that case, Clem will have mined a similar amount to Serral. And at that point, you need to trade effectively, which isn't a thing really in late game. Even for the absolute best Zerg in the world, it really doesn't happen. And Clem is also the best tyrant in the world in this matchup, I think. So it's fair to assume that he needs to keep Clem from taking these bases. I think a fight at this point still wouldn't be ill-advised for Serral, as Clem still keeps poking. All of these trades have been quite good for him. He's now 18k resources lost ahead of Serral. Snipes away a couple of Broodlords once again. Broodlords not doing their job well enough. He only has 8 Broodlords, which I think is fine. I think the Ling Bane Force is the most important. Clem doesn't even have enough Medivacs left over anymore to save all of these ghosts. So you just need to get rid of the ghost, and then Vipers can come in with Parasitic Bomb. Infestors can come in with Fungals. Because the ghosts are the main zoning tool, since there's no tanks here. The Liberators are also zoning, but I think with smart and faster movement, he can maybe circumvent this. Clem is mining the space, by the way, which is completely illegal. There's nothing covering the space whatsoever. Even just Zerglings could kill all of these SCVs. Broodlords, shoot! Serral goes for a counterattack here. I wanted to check if he sees the space, and he absolutely does. He goes for a counterattack. This was the least defended base, so Serral has found the hole in Clem's defenses. Clem F2ing everything here. The Queen! Please, Serral, you can see that this base is completely exposed. He realizes now, he goes forward with the Broodlords. Clem also understanding that he can't just F2 his entire army there. The Broodlords are now poking. Serral is playing a little bit too careful. I think he doesn't quite feel the necessity to push the issue here, as he lands a huge fang on the ghost, kills a lot of ghosts, only 10 ghosts remaining. Kills a couple of these orbitals. He kills one of the orbitals, which Clem definitely could have lifted. And Serral now pushes forward here. Clem mined so many resources from this base. That was never supposed to happen. This is the base that I think Clem could easily take. I have no clue why he's not taking it. But yeah, he's dealing with this first. Also, all of these units here are just supply that is not doing anything for Clem. Because Serral is not going to take these bases. These bases are useless for him to take out. They are completely mined out. So, Clem, I mean... I was about to say should have 2 his units over, but they're all sieged units, so he can't really do anything about that. Would have 2. He needs to recognize the position that he's in. He needs to realize that he doesn't need to fight for the left side anymore, and he needs to bring over the army, because at this point, Serral's army is looking frightening. He has 17 Broodlords, 12 Corruptors, 12 Infestors, 4 Vipers, couple Ultras as well still. Let's look at the army value. Man, Serral's army is much more expensive than Clem's army, and Clem still has a lot of units on the left. I think this is the time to go. But I thought, if this was me, I would have went already 10 times earlier. So I'm gonna let Serral cook, because Serral is the best at this type of stuff. Tries to fish for a fungal. 2 Broodlords die. These trades are never good. They're always, you think, okay, I stack all my Broodlords, I have 20 Broodlords attacking at the same time, but even just 2 Thors that get in range kill a Broodlord by the time the Broodlords even fire. And then he goes, kill a couple of extra Broodlords, 1 Broodlord goes down. Did the ghosts even die? I'm not sure. Battle report would be quite nice here. These engagements do not favor Zerg. I think you need a head-on fight. No clue why these rocks are still here, but I think the ground army coming from behind... There's so many Liberators that are not in fight. There's 5 Liberators over here. There's 4 Liberators over here and 4 tanks. Oh, gets a Nurl on the Thor. So that's a nice fight for Serral, supposedly. He's still approximately 20k resources lost behind. And he still has the better army, but I think he needs to push the issue. He decides to morph all of his Corruptors into Broodlords, which is a wild decision. He wants to use Queens as his main anti-air now. He's completely mined out of gas. He has a little bit gas remaining over here. This is completely mined out. So yeah, his main anti-air now, instead of having Corruptors, is gonna be Queens against these Vikings. I'm not sure if that's the correct call, because Queens are gonna have a hard time getting in range of these. Gets a Fungal on a Ghost. The Ghost dies, but for it, an Infestor and then a Broodlord dies. These poking wars are not favoring Serral whatsoever. And Clem is finally taking this base. He should use all of his energy to mule this base. He actually doesn't have energy. I guess he's scanning the entire time. He has 45 SCVs. Where are the SCVs? Okay, they're coming. Serral pokes forward, kills a couple of units, good parasitic bombs as well. Softening up Clem's army. Oh, I think Clem realized. Oh no, those are just SCVs. Clem still has so many units over here. Snipes land on the Broodlords. And Serral is still taking it very slowly, trying to kill units one at a time. 1 Broodlord goes down, 2, 3 Broodlords go down. There's no way these trades are worth it. You need to kill 2 ghosts per Broodlord that dies in order to have an even trade. Small Ling run by here is very good. He still knows, okay, this is the exposed location, so he can walk through the initial third base of Clem. That's why it's so important to find weaknesses early on. In the armor of the Terran, you can abuse these weaknesses throughout later. Flanking Viper over here, getting a kill on the Liberator is very cute. Clem unsieging the Liberator, making sure to get that parasitic bomb out of the way of the other lib that was standing right next to it. Gets a fungal on 3 of the ghosts. 2, 3 ghosts die there, I believe. I'm just trying to count units that die. The real story is this. 24k resources lost. So the last couple of minutes were not good for Serral. Not good enough, and Clem is mining this base, guys. What did I tell you earlier? This base is very important. And if Clem mines this, I don't see how Serral wins this game. He needs a decisive fight victory. These units have been just chilling. These units have been chilling even. Yes. They just can't do anything. This 4th horse idle here. Clem has so much supply not in the fight. This army is not actually as big as Serral's army still. But Serral not deciding to go for it yet. He also has a bunch of idle queens, by the way. Because I saw he was producing queens for quite a while. And I don't see as many queens over here. Gets a fungal, gets that ghost. With maximum range. So just constant scanning going on over here. And I wonder if this was the right choice. Usually I do not doubt Serral whatsoever, but I think letting Clem have this base cannot be the right decision. Maybe he thinks he traded well enough. Or maybe he thinks it's just not possible to attack. Usually, for either player, it's very difficult to attack. It's very difficult for Terran to run through a choke, where there are Spore Callers, Infestors, and Broodlords. And for the Zerg, you cannot run into Liberators and Ghosts. For both races, being the one that is defending is always much easier than the one that is attacking. Oh, the Broodlords fire a couple of Broodlings here. A lot of Ghost Cloak, basically all of the Ghost Cloak to try and dodge the shot. Clem got a little bit afraid here. These ghosts are running out of energy, slowly but surely. Viper on the flank again. Mission impossible for this Viper. Could get a kill on this Liberator with a parasitic bomb on this other Liberator, so it could deal a lot of damage. Good abduct here as well. Catches some units for free. These are the trades that will save Serral if he wants to win this game. But I'm just afraid that Clem has more stuff to mine still, and his bank is already bigger. Serral needs to win this final engagement, man. Even just Zerglings here could deny this mining. That would be so big. So many resources still to be gathered over here. Like 5,000 more minerals. And 2,300 gas. If you add that on top, because I'm fairly certain that Serral does not have that much, I think Serral needs to go. But he's playing the poking game. He hopes to just outlast his opponent still. Clem now completely out of gas, starts to add in Marines, which is also not optimal. But I do prefer having Marines over Queens in this type of scenario. At least to some extent. I think a couple of Queens are very nice to have. I think this is a couple too many Queens. It's very difficult to abuse them correctly if you have this many of them. Just rapid fire transfuse is not actually that good. Yeah, they're trading energy for actual queen kills now. And Serral is making 42 extra Zerglings. This, I think, means he wants to go for it. He's set up here with the ground army as well. If he wanted to continue the poking game, he would have never made extra Zerglings. Okay, he's taking out the rocks. I think he's gonna flank this army. There are no Widow Mines here, there are no tanks here, so there's no anti-ground splash damage. This still could work for Serral if he gets a dream engagement over here. He needs to force the ghost away with his ground army. He needs to kill the Taurus, basically before all the Broodlords die. One fungal could be huge. Neural Parasites could be huge. There's a turret here spotting for Infestors. Otherwise, I would have said maybe Infestors from behind, from over on this side, trying to get Neurals on the tanks. Could be a play.
he also doesn't have the best anti-liberator, but it's not that many liberators anymore. Clem, what are you doing with the units over here? I can't... If Clem's units were over here, I would call this game over already. He would have 4 more liberators and 4 more siege tanks. How are you ever going to win a fight there? The queens are not going to do anything. They're just giving the tanks a target to hit, so they don't need to friendly fire. And queens are not good against liberators whatsoever. They started moving forward with the spores. Still trying to fish for that one flanker, doesn't get it though.
I can't wait for this fight as a couple of extra snipes. I mean, Serral is bleeding Broodlords and he can't replace them, whereas Clem can replace the units that he's losing still. There's not that much gas left for Clem. But it is more than enough to remax on a cheap army. Gets a couple of snipes on the queens. And I think it's go time for Serral. Serral is going from behind, going from the front. All of the ghosts are not sniping. He's using microbial shot against the liberators, but a lot of liberators have joined the fight. The Thors and the Vikings are completely shredding through the Broodlord count. All of Clem's ground, though, is disappearing. And now the Vipers are coming in for the clear up. It's not enough Corruptors left over, though, I think, to even just win the fight against the Vikings. The Infestors are completely zoned out. He's trying to borrow them now, trying to do something. But this was not good enough. Clem still has a bank. He can make normal bio units. Now there's no Broodlords remaining, so... he doesn't even need any gas. He could just make Marines. Marines is good against what Serral has. Last Fangler gets a double kill to combine with a kill from the Spore. A triple kill on the Liberators. So a good pick off there from Serral. Resources lost now almost 30,000 resources worse than his opponent. And he did not keep Clem from mining this base. Clem almost mined this base entirely. Serral did not manage to mine this base entirely, so... Serral failed in the task of outmining his opponent to the degree where this strategy will work. If he mines out this base entirely, and he mines out this base entirely, I do not doubt that the way he plays is correct. But the way he played, I think he needed to keep Clem from getting this, because he didn't mine it out entirely. And we can see that reflected now. I usually would not do this, but I'm gonna scroll forward a little bit, because this game is... it's not much happening. Clem is still playing it so carefully. This is a ladder game, but it is also for the honor. You can see how much these guys are tryharding, and Serral not leaving the game, even though I'm pretty sure he knows at this point he has 99% lost. Like there's always the options where you feel like, okay, maybe I've lost some fights, but maybe it's fine, maybe it's completely out of resources. Good final there, gets a couple of extra ghosts. And Clem playing it super careful as well. He knows, okay, my opponent's not mining anything. I still have money in the bank. Let me wait to gather the rest of the resources on the map, gather all my units combined, spend my bank, and then do something from there. And that's what they're doing. And I do not see Serral winning this game anymore with 1/3 of the supply of his opponent. Once Clem is maxed out. It's not happening. Gets a Liberator here on the side with a double abduct. He had many nice small moves, but it was not enough. And Clem finally used the units from the bottom left. Fantastic. I'm very glad to see it. Clem keeps scanning for the Vipers, for the Infestors, to make sure he's not getting caught off guard. He has now maxed out, so I think it is finally time. I was about to say for Clem to attack, but instead it is time for Serral to GG. And what a game it was. This was a ladder game, so this is a replay that you won't see anywhere else, because I just asked them for the ladder replay. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I just want to show you guys real quick where I think Serral could have maybe done a thing different. Because I'm sure some of you will ask, okay, so how do I deal with this? So the general game plan of Serral was sound, that you try to mine out the Terran's side of the map first, and then mine the safe bases later on, so you try to steal resources from your opponent. The way Zerg wins is either by breaking their opponent, so you keep hammering away at the Terran's defenses, trying to find holes, trying to find them out of position. This is relying on mistakes of the Terran, where they're not in position, which is hard to do because they usually have sensor towers, which acts like a map hack combined with the scans, but your army is still faster than the Terrans. So the Terran is out of position. Let's say he ever busts this location, he can start doing runbys towards here. And it becomes even harder for Clem to hold this. This is how most of the Zergs play. And what Serral went for is the exhaust play, where he tries to mine out the Terran side of the map, then get a final army because you have mined more, and then trade effectively enough to win the game there because you have mined your opponent's side of the map. So his game plan is basically, I'm staying on a mobile army to take your side of the map and to deny you from expanding too fast. And then by the end, I'll get an immobile army that is supposed to trade evenly against you. The issue is that Broodlords are just not always trading evenly. I think whenever Broodlords trade evenly, that's the best case scenario. So he needed to keep Clem from taking this base. I think at this point, still it was fine for Serral. Especially because the Broodlords were... They were not unscouted. I know that Clem saw them, but they did get a lot of value in. And at this point, Clem is basically mined out. So I think you invest all your resources and your fights into keeping Clem from mining this. Ever. So you search for fights here actively. The moment Clem starts moving out. So you can try to poke here. See if he has enough units over here. You can check if he has enough units here. Maybe with overseers or something like that. And then as long as Clem's army is split, which it is, Clem didn't just leave any of the positions undefended. As long as his army is split, you can go for the direct engagement with your entire army. And then you should have such an overwhelming army advantage that even though the Terran trades effectively, you should still be able to kill the Terran units. And I think at this point, you can and should go for the fight. It's just so hard with air units against these Vikings and Ghosts because you might just lose everything in the air when you go. And whenever you lose everything in the air, the Ghosts always escape because they have medevacs. I think this was the time to go. Okay, listen. Listen to this. The Broodlord's coming from over here, together with the Infestors. The Lingbane Ultra just runs over at this, and then the Vipers come from a third angle to make sure to get parasitic bombs on everything. Infestors pre-split. This is the fight I'm imagining right now. And then you remax. You make sure that he never gets the space. You try to take this space yourself. Clem probably rotates over all the units because he's struggling, and then you can try to make something happen somewhere else. I mean, it's impossible to say how it would go, but I think Serral had a solid 10-minute window where it would have been better for him to engage, but he didn't. I'm just gonna scroll forward here and mute this real quick because I don't want to hear the constant scanning noise. I think even now that Clem went back again, Serral made one very good army move, which was this counterattack, which forced Clem back, but he didn't do the Broodlord attack fast and decisive enough at the same time. So now he pushes Clem back over here. I think you just need to go for a direct fight. I think you need to go. And I think if Serral would have all the information, he would as well. I think Serral thought that he mined enough at the bottom left that Clem doesn't have a bank once this is mined out. But Clem did actually have a bank. So it was not good enough. It's always hard to tell how much bank exactly your opponent has in long games like this. And I think even now, it would be... Like now is the latest time where I think he needs to go. At this point, he has 172 army supply, and he has an insane army value compared to the Terrans. And the Terran still has these units over here. 4 tanks and 4 libs, which is a big deal. Honestly, it's a big deal. And then he has the 3 libs covering this, which is also not covered entirely. And I think you just have to go here. It's just, I don't know how he engages when he has this many Broodlords. Going for a full engage with this many Broodlords is super hard because you will just lose everything to Vikings eventually. So maybe at this point it's already too late. Not entirely sure. It's not like I win late games against Clem either. So who am I to talk? Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like this type of format, I can ask my friends more often when I see they're playing epic games to get their ladder replays. So if you liked it, leave a like. Let me know in the comments. And I'll see you all in the next video. I suppose next year we'll see each other again. Until then, take care everybody. And see you around.